This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Good evening, I'm Amanda Kinsley-Smith. Thank you for joining me on the Sunday Late Show on Teachers Talk Radio. It is Sunday the 14th of January 2024, and my guest tonight is Amanda Ritchie, Head of Biology in a post-primary school here in Northern Ireland. Amanda will be talking to me about a career break that took her all the way to Australia and what that taught her about work-life balance.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Okay, it's January. It's still dark. The cheery Christmas lights are down, the cold snap has arrived, the excitement of the festive season's given way to a busy term. I'm sure we've all got open nights and exam prep ramping up and all sorts of things, and you might find yourself getting in at night, wiping the rain off your foggy glasses, defrosting yourself by the radiator, and dreaming of swapping it all for, say, the sunny beaches of Australia. It's something we hear a lot of, especially when it comes to these days of public sector strikes, particularly in the NHS. Public sector workers could earn more or have better working conditions in Australia, but is that always the case? Well, one person who has the authority to give us her take on that question is my guest tonight, a fellow Amanda Ritchie. Now, I'm privileged to call Amanda both a colleague and a friend, which is of benefit to my own work-life balance, something we'll get on to later. And I thought she was the perfect person to have on in January to share some of that Australian sunshine with us and what it taught her about her work-life balance. I can see Amanda is in the live studio, which is great. So hopefully she can call in and then we'll be able to start our chat. I thought she was just the perfect person to have on at the minute because we can apply the benefit of her experiences and some of what she's learned to our own lives. There we go, just adding Amanda in now, because that could either be in terms of maybe we've got a New Year's resolution to try and improve our work-life balance, or maybe you're feeling adventurous and you are planning your own trip down under. Either way, I know many people who've considered it, but for me personally, Amanda Ritchie is the only person I've met who has been brave enough to up sticks, leave everything behind, and move to the land of Oz. I can see Amanda's here in with us now. Can you hear us okay, Amanda?
I can. Can you hear me?
Beautifully. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. Now, I know you well. We have been friends and worked together for a while, but obviously people who are listening in might not. So I thought we'd start off just with a little bit about you yourself and your journey into teaching, so that then we can understand and connect more with your experiences when you tell us about that big move to Australia.
Yes, absolutely.
So
If I can just give you a bit of background, I'm sitting in my big old 1900s house in front of the fire with bare wood floor and bare painted walls. So I hope it's not too echoey.
Well, it sounds perfectly clear to me. Yes, that's something we will get on to, because now that Amanda is home, she has started into more projects and more things in terms of work-life balance, taking on the restoration of said house.
Life is never dull.
No. If we could start then just at the beginning, thinking about your journey into teaching, what was your inspiration for wanting to go into teaching in the first place? Where did you start off?
Do you know, I was one of those people that I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I was actually quite envious of people that really knew their path from like primary school. I kind of knew my secondary school teacher, or my biology teacher, was someone that I just thought was incredible. And her passion for biology, I think, really made me just absolutely love it. Mm-hmm. And what's quite sad is she probably doesn't even know that, because, as a teenager, you don't really build up the courage to actually say that. But it probably was her that actually a couple of my biology teachers were brilliant in my school. And I think just by the end of my A-levels, I thought, you know what, I love that so much that, I want to study it at uni. But honestly, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. But the funny thing was, I was listening to Erica Luke's podcast, and she was saying that she ended up tutoring some students, And I actually ended up doing that. I ended up tutoring students on genetics because they couldn't get it. They were just like, Amanda, I just don't get it. Could you help? And I did. And I remember loving it and loving that my friends understood what I was saying and that it helped them with genetics. And then they started to say, maybe you should think about being a teacher. And honestly, that was really at A level was the first time it kind of started to sink in, maybe this should be a path that I should follow. So to be honest, I followed the biology path. I went to Queen's University, did biomedical science, absolutely loved it, loved the content, went to America for a year with it, and then came back in final year, and it was very lab-based work, and it just was too quiet for me. It just wasn't enough interaction. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to give the teaching a bash. So I went and did my PGCE in Southampton, and I wouldn't say I loved that now. It was very challenging, very, very challenging. But I was certainly never bored, and there was lots of good moments in it. But it certainly wasn't an easy year, I would say. I'm honest enough to say that, it was hard. But now I'm in the school that I'm at. The relationships with the students are one of the things that I absolutely love about my job.
Absolutely.
So I know I'm in the right place for the moment, for sure.
So what was that like in the States, in the United States? What were you doing there as part of your course?
I was actually really lucky. I mean, I've always wanted to travel, always wanted to go on trips, always the yes person for anything. If anybody's going anywhere, I'm like, yes, I'll do that, no problem. So I was just really lucky that it was a sandwich year that was offered in Reno, Nevada. And there were 7 of us that were really lucky to go, and it was lab experience. So biomedical degree is very much a biomedical scientist. So you do lots of experiments in the labs and you use quite complicated equipment. And America, they have so much money in their labs and their equipment is amazing. And they have these really knowledgeable scientists who are incredible, publish in journals all around the world, go and do all these research conferences. So the 7 of us went to Reno. We got 2 small houses to rent. We were completely skint the entire time, but we ended up having a ball and really saw a lot of things in America. And I learned my lab skills there to the point that when I came back and did my final year in my degree, my thesis, it was hard work, but lab skills were like so embedded. I found it so much easier. I'd made so many contacts between America and Queen's. It was just such an incredible year. So if any student, had the opportunity or anybody to do one of those sandwich years, I would say 100% go for it, because the contacts I made from it and the skills I gained, I just couldn't have imagined what I gained from it before I went. And obviously it was really good fun as well to go to America. And see San Francisco and California, it was amazing. And I still have great friends that live over there and we still keep in touch a little bit, So I love that you end up with global friends as well.
I think that's huge. That's for me personally as well. We've both travelled in that respect, because my degree was joint English and Spanish. And part of that was the 3rd year you went to a Spanish speaking country for a year. And you could either attend university and go to classes and sit the exams, but the grades didn't count for anything, or you could go and work as a language assistant in a high school and get paid peanuts, but something.
But it was all experience, wasn't it?
Exactly. And I thought it was such a better option. I was like, why would I study for something that's not going to count when I could earn enough to get by for a year and go and work in this high school? And I remember the language assistants for French and Spanish when I was an A-level student. Mm-hmm. And I thought, let's give that a go. A bit like yourself, I hadn't thought of going into teaching, but then that experience for me was what made me think, actually, this is fun. I like this. I like being in the classroom. I like showing students how things work and how I was teaching English as a foreign language. And I thought, actually, I could get into this. This sounds about right. But the same as you were saying, it's left me now with friends in Spain and from different travels, friends over the world who I just wouldn't have met otherwise. And I think that's a hugely enriching experience in itself as well.
It is, and you don't really realize that. I think, I kind of thought to myself, oh, I'll meet these people and then, I'll not see them again. But actually, when you're so far from home, similar to Australia, you know, you build closer connections with people because you really need to, you know, for those tight relationships. And actually, not that I see them very often, but a lot of those relationships, you know, have lasted all that time. And, you know, I flew back and went to a friend's wedding in America. Another friend actually moved back to Donegal and I went to her wedding, you know, and I met them just over there in America. So um, I'm just so pleased that I took that opportunity when I was younger, even though I was a wee bit scared. I'm so pleased I did it, to learn all those skills, but also just to have all those experiences when you're young and a bit more carefree. No mortgages.
Oh, I know. The idea of being a bit scared but still going on and having a crack at it's definitely something we'll come back to whenever
Yeah.
we look at your other big move. So
Oh, there
you
was plenty
decided
of
then
that.
to I'm sure. So there was your lab experiences, and then you decided that was too quiet, and you thought, yeah, okay, let's go to Southampton, do my teacher training. What was it like then when you started actually teaching in the classrooms?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I just remember, I suppose it was probably the age that we were all at, you know, thinking, oh, this will be a DOS. You know, we're all, you know, after your degree, you know, we'd probably done very well and we thought, I know my stuff here, you know, we can do this totally. And I remember getting into the classroom in my first lesson and being utterly petrified. I just thought, how is it possible that I'm standing in the front of the room with about 28 children in this room just staring at me, hanging off my every word, and I just don't have a clue? You know, obviously I'd prepared and had all my lesson plans and knew what I was doing, but there's an element that you just have to figure out as you go. And I remember just being utterly petrified. And it was just wee year eights, you know, and they were so keen. And I remember one of the first ones was using microscopes. And stupidly, I hadn't prepared. I'd prepared with another microscope, but not the ones that were in the room. And I remember lifting this microscope out and thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know. Why can I not figure this out? I don't really know what to do. And the tutor had to step in and help me. And it was a really big lesson because I thought to myself, do you know what, Amanda, you really need to bring this back down and know your stuff before you try to go in and wing it. So I learned that the hard way. But, you know, it was really, I have to be honest, it was a really, really tough year. I realised when I was younger, still am a little bit of a perfectionist. Other than the microscope day, I learned the hard way. I think I was trying to do everything to every detail and just know everything down to a T. So I found it quite stressful because in teaching, you can't really. I mean, you can know what you're going to teach and have this brilliant plan. But one of the great things about teaching is you have to be able to roll with it. You have to be able to read the room, read the personalities, make sure they're engaged, change it up. And when you're learning, I think that's quite petrifying
Yeah.
to have the confidence to do that. Now that I'm older, I kind of thrive on that and love that. But the PGCE was a really steep learning curve and hard work. But when the kids got it or when the students got it, it just made me feel like $1,000,000. And I was like, right. So there's glimpses of hope in this steep learning curve and challenge, you know. And honestly, our course, there was at least 25% dropout by Christmas. I mean, it
Wow.
was, I just remember going in January and thinking, where is everybody? Are people late? Do they not know where we are? And actually, a lot of them had left because I think, I mean, I don't know, England, I think, is a little bit different than Northern Ireland. You know, some of the schools were incredibly tough. And if those people were putting those placements in the incredibly tough schools, they just left because they probably just thought, I've worked so hard in one degree and now I'm paying for this one. And it's just so challenging, I think. Thankfully, a lot of us stuck it out and, you know, it does get better. But I think those teaching adverts sometimes can really lure you into this false sense of security. And you know what? Sometimes it's hard and you have to think on your feet and you need to be quite resilient to deal with some of them. So it was a hard year, challenging one, but I was so grateful to get to the end and I'd learned so much and I'd learned so many skills, you know. And it depends on the skills that you got too. I got some tough skills, but you know what? It taught me so much. I was able to deal with, you know, behaviour management, I think, was much better by the time I came back. So it was very different to my degree. Very
Mm,
different.
I'm
My degree
sure.
was quite quiet in a lab. You'd be dissecting in the morning, listening to the radio, doing your experiments, repeat, repeat, repeat. And then the PGCE was just like a baptism of fire. Um, but, those days that really it worked well, you thought, right, this is working well. I can cope with this. This is good.
Do you know what, though? That baptism of fire probably showed you just how resilient you were, which is also then possibly something that let you know that even though taking the career break later and moving so far away was going to be tough, that you knew that you would be able to do it. We're going to take a pause just for a little minute here. And when we come back, Amanda's going to share with us some of her planning of what it's actually like to make that move and on some of the preparation and practicalities that we might want to consider if we're doing such a thing ourselves.
Bet UK is just 2 weeks away. Are you ready to join 30,000 attendees, 600 plus exhibitors on 7 content stages from 120 countries and see Louis Theroux, Dame Darcy Bustle, Jason Ade, Laura Kana, Baroness Floella Benjamin, Dan Fitzpatrick, Mr. PICT and so much more? I might need to bring my trainers. The best part? Educators go free. Get your ticket now at uk.betshow.com/visitor-registration.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishing professional development books and resources to support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Have you checked out their latest releases? Use the code JCTTR2324 for 20% off your order. Don't miss out. Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading.
Introducing Eton X from Eton College, a diverse range of quality online courses enabling young people to aspire and excel. Designed for self-study, these web-based courses empower your students with essential leadership, communication, and academic skills for success at school and beyond. Our Study Skills course sharpens their learning abilities, while the AI Fundamentals course equips them with vital digital know-how in a fast-changing world. Other popular courses include verbal communication, critical thinking, writing skills, resilience, creative problem solving, and many more. Offer the Eton X curriculum in your school for free. Visit etonx.com to find out more.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Maths is in the news again, according to the BBC News website. This time the story is about the pass rate for GCSE resits in the subject. November results show 22.9% of maths entries were marked at grade 4 or above, down from 24.9% in 2022 and 26.9% in 2019. In contrast, the pass rates for GCSE English resits rose to 40.3%, up from 38% in 2022 and 32.3% in 2019. In England, under 18s must retake the GCSE in English and Maths if they did not achieve a minimum of grade 4. The resits for the recent November series were marked, like the summer 2023 exams, back in line with the pre-pandemic levels. Prior to the exams, some colleges reported they were having to expand class sizes and hire additional exam space to cope with rising numbers of pupils retaking the 2 subjects. Those sitting the subjects in November are only a subset of the total resitting, as some pupils will not take the tests until the summer. The fall in the maths pass rate comes after government announced plans to replace A-level and T-level qualifications with a new Advanced British Standard, which would include some English and Maths up to the age of 18. Whilst the arrival of the new Ofsted chief made many headlines across media outlets, Schools Week focused on tech issues which prevented many inspectors from accessing training. All inspectors working in schools, FE, social care and early years were due to attend mental health awareness training led by Sir Martin Oliver, which was around 3,000 staff. However, it was announced that Ofsted had experienced some technical issues and that fewer than 1,000 inspectors were able to actually access the online sessions. Ofsted did say that a recording was available so those not able to attend would watch it back. Inspections, paused for the start of the new term, will resume on the 22nd of January. They were not paused in early years settings. Attendance is in the news again and looks set to be a key focus for all political parties as a general election approaches. In a recent speech to the Centre for Social Justice, Shadow Minister for Education Bridget Phillipson said Labour would pass a law to register and count the children taught at home, adding that it was important that local authorities know where children not in school are. Plans also included setting up more breakfast clubs. The current government has proposed similar in its schools bill, but this and many other aspects were abandoned at a later date. However, new attendance hubs are being launched in London to help reduce persistent absence. The DfE has chosen 9 schools with excellent attendance rates to share ideas with others across England. An advertising campaign called Moments Matter, Attendance Counts was also launched, although some aspects drew criticism from some quarters concerned that the campaign sought to minimise mental health issues. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan said, "Tackling attendance is my number one priority." In Wales, teachers at a high school are striking over poor behaviour of pupils, and NASUWT in Wales say there are now 6 schools in dispute over classroom safety. Teachers in Scotland have also raised concerns about deteriorating behaviours. The TES magazine featured an article by Bill Rogers, behaviour consultant, university lecturer and author. The article focuses on possible reasons for what teachers report as deteriorating behaviours in schools and strategies to improve things. These include focusing on describing and insisting on the behaviours needed for all to learn. Also using clear, assertive language and calling pupils to account for their behaviour. The full article is available online. Finally, the BBC has run an article on the news website focusing on how children and adults can stay healthy at the start of the new term. Officially, January marks the start of the spring term, but winter bugs like norovirus and flu are likely around for several months yet. The article focuses on 5 top tips: regular hand washing, regular cleaning of high contact areas, staying at home for serious illnesses such as high fever, vomiting or diarrhoea, vaccinations where necessary or applicable, and using the NHS online services to keep informed or to seek advice. Hopefully, a healthy new year will lead to a happy start to the spring term. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Jo Fox.
And welcome back. We're with Amanda Ritchie, who is telling us all about her career break in Australia and what that can teach us about work-life balance. So, Amanda, we had talked there about how you got into teaching in the first place. I suppose now the time's come to think about what led you just to consider then taking a break from teaching. How long had you been teaching at that point?
I had been teaching 6 years by then. So it was 3 years in one school, and then I transferred to 3 years that I'm in the school now. So 6 years in total. And I ended up doing acting head of biology quite quickly in my first school, which absolutely petrified me. But my head of biology was going on maternity leave and they needed somebody, to step up only for 9 months. And because I'd only been teaching for 2 years, I was a bit like, oh my goodness, I can't do this, are you kidding? But actually I had great support from a fabulous VP and I just did it for the year. And then it kind of, gave me a little taste of it, I suppose. And I was ready to move and try a new school. So yeah, it was 6 years, which I suppose isn't that long, but enough to get your wee routines and experiences in place.
Mm-hmm.
But I suppose back to what made me really make the decision. I mean, I've always been a traveller. I've always wanted to explore. I don't know where that has come from, but I always have. And I suppose going to America and having such a good time. I mean, I was quite homesick in America, but I loved it. I loved being somewhere new in a different culture and being in the outdoors and experiencing a new lifestyle. And to be honest, when I came home after that, I always knew I'd move somewhere else. I just wasn't sure when. And then suddenly you kind of hit 30 and I was like, oh my goodness, will I ever move again? Will I, if I don't do something soon, I might miss that opportunity. So I suppose a few things were happening, teaching. I became head of department again, which was great, but a little overwhelming, I have to say, purely, I think mostly because of myself. I was definitely more of a perfectionist then. When I became head of department, I just wanted all the resources to be top notch. I wanted everything on the computer. I wanted the best stuff. I just wanted the department to be right on top almost immediately, which is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous because it was working really well as it was. I just had a vision that I wanted to carry forward, and I put an awful lot of pressure on myself to do that within a ridiculously short period of time. So those first 6 months as HOD, I found incredibly difficult and actually felt really stressed by it. And I was in a relationship and it broke down, and I ended up quite depressed. So I had enough energy to go to school and do my job really well. But as soon as I came home, I would literally get into bed at 5 o'clock and not leave it. And I did that for a good 3, 4, maybe 5 months. And I remember my mum saying to me, I'm really worried about you here. This is not the way you should be living. This is not, what you should be doing. And now when I look back, I think, my goodness, I was incredibly depressed. I'm not coping very well. But probably to everyone in school, they probably thought she's doing okay. Because you do that, don't you? When you go into your workplace, you put on this persona that you are okay and you do your job to the best of your ability. But I had no energy left when I came home, and I think I was burnt out. I was exhausted. I was a bit depressed from things not working out the way they should have done in my head by the time I was 30. And my very good friend went to Australia about 9 months before with her partner, and I just thought, wow, how incredible to do that. And then life was a bit low, and I thought, you know what? If I do not do something, I'm going to keep doing this wheel for the rest of my life. And I saw a little quote. It was, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Mm-hmm. And I thought, my 9 to 5s are going to look like this, and I'm going to keep doing this. So I remember seeing it was on, one of those wee flip calendars, like a wee quote for the day.
Yeah.
And honestly, I kind of laugh at myself now because I literally turned over the calendar. It was in the prep room, in the biology prep room. And I remember reading it and just thinking, right, that's it. And that day, I looked up the forms for a career break. I printed them off and thought, am I really going to do this? And I went home and thought about it. And the next day, I filled them in and took them up the stairs. I say up the stairs, that's up to obviously our principal. And
as quick as that?
As quick as that, because I just thought, I can't think about this too much or else I won't go. But honestly, my intention was just to take a break, just to go traveling for a few months, see my friend who was saying how amazing it was. And I remember her saying to me, Amanda, if you come out here, January's brilliant. It's so depressing in the UK, but if you come to Australia, it's brilliant. And I was like, how could January possibly be brilliant? Are you kidding me? And you know what? She was absolutely right. So I went out in the August and I had a ticket booked back for Christmas. So I was only supposed to go for this big adventure. I'd booked to go to Bali, as I did. After Eat, Pray, Love, I thought I'm going to go to Bali and, really improve myself. And went on to Australia to meet my friend. And I loved it so much that I thought, oh my goodness, I don't want to come home. I really don't. I really want to stay on and really try and make this work. And I had no intentions to stay for as long as I did. I just thought I'll stay out the year. And then I ended up there 5 years. Wow. It really wasn't my intention. It kind of snowballed. So that was really what led me out there. I suppose a bit of burnout and a bit of a low patch. And I thought, I'm going to shake things up and just take a break.
Can I say, first of all, just before we go any further with this, thank you so much for being so honest with everything that you were feeling at that point and what led you then to make that decision, because I really think a lot of what you're saying there, Amanda, will resonate with a lot of us. And things like that perfectionism and putting yourself under that pressure, I think we can all be guilty of that. And the stupid thing is we don't expect it of anybody else.
No.
And yet we put it on ourselves, And I think that being so open about how you were feeling. And thank goodness that you had, the likes of your mum there who was noticing these things, that you were able to notice it yourself, that you flipped over the calendar on that one day to see that one quotation looking at you.
Yeah, I still remember it, just going, do you know what? I'm going to do that. That's what I'm going to do.
I can't believe it was so quick that you
I know,
immediately
very
then looked up the
impulsive. I mean,
forms.
I'm not normally impulsive, but I think sometimes um, when things are happening in your life and you're just, you're a bit low and you're not quite sure, you almost need a wee aha moment like that to go, do you know what? What's the worst that's going to happen? Actually, my dad said that to me. He's not with us now, dear love him, but I remember him saying to me, what's the worst that's going to happen, Amanda? You get on the plane, you go to Australia, and if you don't like it, you get back on the plane and you come back. And I was like, oh yeah. Yes,
very
you can,
practical way of
actually.
looking at it.
Exactly. I mean, I could at that age because I had no other ties, and of course I could then. So I'm glad that I just took the leap,
Did it when you could.
Yeah, did it when I could. Exactly.
Did you consider taking a break but staying here in Northern Ireland or the UK or somewhere closer to home where the trip back wouldn't be quite so long and exhausting?
I have to say, no, I didn't for 1 second. I think I wanted a real adventure. I wanted something completely different. And because I'd been in England for the PGCE, so I'd kind of lived away that year as well. And I really enjoyed England, actually. It was in Southampton. I really enjoyed the south of England. But I knew I needed something bigger to shake whatever was happening, in my mind and my body. And actually, another big share is that, my dad was always quite mentally ill. So I felt like I needed a big break from that too. And I almost felt like the further I went, the more independent or the more freedom that I had, which is totally ridiculous because it's not really, but I just needed a big change and a big adventure, and I never once thought of staying in Northern Ireland. And actually, I think it's tricky when you stay in Northern Ireland and the UK because of the rules of the career break. You're not allowed to, there's certain jobs, you're not allowed to teach, you're not allowed to do certain jobs. So
Oh, right.
there are certain conditions with a career break. I think you're allowed to, maybe set up your own business. You're maybe allowed to do another job outside of teaching, but you certainly can't do anything teaching related as far as I know. So I kind of thought, I'm going to go to Australia and travel and just have a great time. And I actually thought, I'm not going to teach. I'm just going to go and have a great time. And then obviously I ended up teaching. I'm loving it. But, and I remember a lovely nurse, because you have to get all your injections before you go to Bali in Australia. I remember a lovely nurse saying to me, I did that. And I said I would never do nursing. And you know what, Amanda? You'll end up teaching. And I said, no, I won't. And I did. And I loved it. So if anybody's thinking about a career break, there are a few wee conditions, but it was definitely one of the best decisions I ever made, was to have a career break, for sure.
And that moves us on quite nicely then to think about it. If if there is anybody who's listening who is thinking about this, what was that actual process like? It's only whenever you're saying there about the conditions on taking a sabbatical that I realised I didn't even know that if you were doing it at home that you couldn't do anything teaching related. So what's that process like of looking for the job and applying to move and then having to find a house and everything when you're there? It just seems huge. That seems overwhelming to me. That feels just, I wouldn't know where to begin.
I know. And you know what? Now I've done it, I can honestly say it is really overwhelming. But I think before I left, I was so blissfully unaware of what was ahead of me. I honestly, actually getting the career break was really easy. It was, one A4 page, and you just had to say really what you wanted your break for. And as long as the principal was on side, that was dead easy. And I remember just thinking, oh my goodness, like it's granted. That was dead easy. It must be meant to be. And then the Australia part, I honestly went to travel and the teaching was kind of secondary. So it was tricky. I mean, getting a working visa was relatively easy because I just thought I was going traveling. So I applied for the one that you can work for one employer. I think it's 3 months or 6 months. I can barely remember now. And then you have to switch employers. So I thought that's no problem. But actually getting qualified as a teacher, my goodness, there was so much admin, so many hoops. You had to go for like a medical exam to make sure that you're medically okay to go to Australia. There's quite a lot of, now not teaching related, but to go to Australia, there's age limits. So you're much better to go before you're 30. I think maybe even before 35, maybe still the case. I mean, I was okay because I fitted into that. But if it was over, there was a lot more paperwork to do. But you basically need to apply for accreditation for Australia. And then whatever state you're going to live in, you also have to apply for accreditation there. And for whatever reason, they just didn't like my modules that I'd done. So I had to get extra proof from Queen's. I had to get extra proof from Southampton. I actually ended up
proof of your capability of teaching the curriculum for that state in Australia.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. And it was a whole rigmarole because actually I was over there then. So I had to, the time difference and the emailing and then the time difference, and they actually wanted it mailed. So they wanted a paper version. So everything was like snail mail. Honestly, it was so old fashioned and truncated. And I ended up having to do 2 additional chemistry modules because they thought my chemistry wasn't up to scratch, which of course it was. I'd been teaching science. My first job was as a science teacher. It wasn't biology, it was science. So that was really tricky, but I kind of, friends of friends had done it before and they sent me an email kind of detailing all the stuff I had to do, and you literally just had to be so pedantic with it and work through it, and it took quite a long time, but I eventually got accredited. So I would say to anybody that wants to teach in Australia, the paperwork isn't easy. You can do it, of course you can, but I would definitely do it before I left. Of course I'll go to Australia and just jumped on a plane and kind of did it when I got there, but I would definitely do it before I went this time, just to give you that peace of mind. And also the private schools are such a huge market over there. The public schools are difficult. And, I can talk a bit more about that, but the private schools are big money. I mean, the facilities are incredible. The students are great and the jobs are, you're really well paid. And actually there's a lot of agencies that will link you with a great school. So actually you don't have to do a lot of the legwork yourself with the private sector. So I would also say to anybody, go private because you'll get great jobs. You'll get agencies just giving you a choice of options and you just go for the interviews and they'll start you pretty quickly because they're crying out for teachers there too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would definitely do if I was ever going back that way again.
Where did you do, I'm just thinking about those chemistry modules. Where did you do those modules and how long did that take?
Oh my goodness, Amanda. See, studying again in your 30s, chemistry was online.
Look, studying chemistry wasn't great for me the first time round. So.
Oh my goodness, I was literally, if you can picture this, I was living in Byron Bay by that time. I was surfing, I was living by the beach, the weather was incredible. I was living the absolute dream. And then I had to do these 2 chemistry modules that I thought would be quite easy breezy. And they were so intense. So intense. Now, I'd obviously done a lot of it before, but it was online. And I remember going into my room at nighttime while my friends were watching a wee movie after they'd been surfing or whatever. And I had to go into my wee room and sit with my wee laptop. And you had to work through these online modules and do a test to pass each phase. So I did that and they were expensive. It was thousands of dollars to do it. But I knew if I wanted to stay, I just had to do it. I had to get accredited properly and move up the pay scale, to get a better wage. Because it's scary. You're over there. I was over there by myself. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any family. I had to support myself. And Australia is a great country, but rent is expensive. So if you're on a good salary, you can afford it, no problem. But if you're not accredited properly, you're on the lowest rung of a teacher wage. And it's really, of course you can get by on it, but it's not enough to fly home, see family, to really enjoy yourself. So I knew I had to get fully accredited and move up the scale, as I should have been, I should have been. So I was
Well, as
grateful I
you
did
said,
it.
your first priority for that year was travel. So there wouldn't be much point in going to literally just replace what you were doing at home with what you're doing over there. You're going to want to be further up the rung so that you've got a bit of money to go surfing in Byron Bay and
Oh, I know, it was
see a bit
amazing.
more of
Seeing
the
I talk
country while
about it
you're
now,
there.
oh, it's like a different era altogether. Yeah, and when I'm talking about those modules, that was a year or two in. Those first few months, I worked in a cafe as a barista. It was fantastic. It was brilliant. Really enjoyed it. It was great. And then I thought, maybe I should try and earn a bit more money for myself here using the skills that I have.
Like the nurse had told you were going to end up
the
doing.
Nurse had told me. I heard her voice and I thought, do you know what? I've got these good skills, and if I can get into a good school here, it'll be great. And thankfully, that's what eventually happened. There's a few wee stories in between.
Oh, I can imagine there will be. It's making me think about whenever I did my PGCE, there was a fantastic man on the course. He was another student, the same as me, but he was from the United States and he had already been teaching for years. But to come over here, he then had to redo the PGCE.
Oh my
And
goodness.
he never seemed annoyed about it. He must have just made his peace with it before he ever got into the actual course with the rest of us. But do you know what? For me, it was fantastic because it was like having another tutor on the course.
Absolutely. So he taught for a few years, had he?
He'd been teaching for years. He'd been teaching English for years. And then he came in, and it was great because whenever we were doing things where you remember all that, where you had to prep a lesson and teach the rest of the group a certain thing, it was great because it was like a professional workshop, getting to see him teach us, because he knew exactly what he was doing and he was able to talk us through, the reasons why he was doing. Yeah, he was great. And some of those things you were saying earlier about when you first start out and you see the veteran teachers able to just run with it and be flexible and react to things, without, when things don't go according to plan, they've always got their next plan up their sleeve. He had that. So it was interesting for us to be able to see that from the start.
Oh, I was absolutely in awe of teachers. It really made me look at the profession very differently. I think there is a stigma out there about what a school teacher does. I think there's still this old-fashioned view that you have this magic drawer that you open, or, that has your plans done, and you have a textbook and you just go turn to page, 84 and start writing. And it's so different to that. But I think there is still that stigma. So when I first started the PGCE, I was like, oh my goodness, this is so different. And it was I remember thinking, I can't really be Amanda. I really need to be Miss Ritchie. And I'm not really sure who that's supposed to be. How am I supposed to manage this room? I can't be myself fully. I have to put a bit of a teacher mask on. And I think part of the year was learning, what does that look like? Do I need a mask? And I really felt like I sort of did. In a good way, that you went into school and you're Miss Ritchie. And when I left, I was kind of back to Amanda. But it was a really big learning curve.
And then you had years of that. And then suddenly you're in Australia and you're having to learn a new way of doing it. And we'll get on to... Oh, do you know, as soon as you said it's not like you have a textbook and you can say turn to page 84. My first experience of teaching was in Valencia in Spain when I was a language assistant teaching English as a foreign language. And I'll never forget it. There was one day that I'd said to my class, and I'd been teaching them for a few months at this stage, they knew me well. And I went, right, okay, turn to page 88. We're looking at this. There's an extract there. We're not reading the extract. We're doing this activity at the side. Blank faces. And I was like, okay, there's something we haven't understood. What is it we've not understood? One person put their hands up and went, Amanda, what is peage? And I went, oh, holy St. Francis, is that what I sound like? Okay. Okay, peage is page. And then the next hand went up and I went, I know where this is going. What is 88? I was like, oh.
Our accent is terrible. I mean, it really is. I mean, I had a few issues in America, but as you say, when you're trying to teach young people, and I think it's learning even how to correct yourself, the way you're saying page and then page, you know, it took me a while to learn. I was like, how am I supposed to say this? What is the correct pronunciation of this word?
What will make it clear?
What will make it clearer? Yeah.
Well, we're gonna hear some stories in just a minute about what it was like then whenever you did start teaching over in Australia. Mm-hmm. So we're going to take a short pause and we are going to come back to hear about that.
Lovely.
BETT UK is just 2 weeks away. Are you ready to join 30,000 attendees, 600 plus exhibitors on 7 content stages from 120 countries, and see Louis Theroux, Dame Darcy Bustle, Jason Arde, Laurel Kana, Baroness Floella Benjamin, Dan Fitzpatrick, Mr. PICT, and so much more? I might need to bring my trainers. The best part? Educators go free! Get your ticket now at uk.bettshow.com/visitor-registration.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishing professional development books and resources to support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Have you checked out their latest releases? Use the code JCTTR2324 for 20% off your order. Don't miss out. Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading.
Introducing Eton X from Eton College, a diverse range of quality online courses enabling young people to aspire and excel. Designed for self-study, these web-based courses empower your students with essential leadership, communication, and academic skills for success at school and beyond. Our Study Skills course sharpens their learning abilities, while the AI Fundamentals course equips them with vital digital know-how in a fast-changing world. Other popular courses include verbal communication, critical thinking, writing skills, resilience, creative problem solving, and many more. Offer the Eton X curriculum in your school for free. Visit etonx.com to find out more.
Okay, so we have been hearing from Amanda Ritchie tonight about her journey into teaching, about her decision then to take a career break in Australia, which went from being 3 months of traveling to 5 years, including teaching. I remember us all actually recording little messages for you in the staff room.
Oh,
because we had thought you were going to be back so soon, and then when we realised we weren't, it was another one of your friends who organised us all to record little messages for you to send over, which was funny for us because it was reminding us just how far away you were. But that must have been strange as well for you when you first moved. I mean, when you first moved over, where did you move to? Like, did you have people already out there that you knew that you could stay with, or were you just suddenly away from everybody?
I had my good friend Gillian in Sydney, but she was due to come back to Northern Ireland at Christmas time, just before Christmas. But initially that was fine because I thought, you know what, I'm going to Bali. I'll go to Australia, I'll meet Gillian in Sydney, stay with her, for maybe like a week or two, and then I'll just do a bit of travelling. I'll kind of just see what happens. So it really wasn't my intention to stay, and I had like an absolute ball with Gillian. And then actually what happened, we went up to Byron Bay and I started surfing, and I met some kind of surf buddies, Nikki and Anna. They were one of the first people that I met surfing, and I just loved it. And I stayed in a hostel at the grand old age of 31. And like surfing every day and just absolutely loved it. And then I kind of went to travel on up because I thought, okay, now this is time for me to move on and travel. And I missed them so much. And I thought, why am I forcing myself to, like you almost have a to-do list. Mm-hmm. Why am I forcing myself to do this when actually all I want to do is go back to Byron and surf with my newfound friends? And I really enjoyed that. But then it did get to a point and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to make some decisions here. So then I decided, right, I'm going to stay for the year. I can't really afford to go home at Christmas. So I'll just move my flight until I think it was the next July or something. But then Gillian left and I think I went back to Sydney because I thought there's loads of jobs there. The problem with Byron Bay is there's not a lot of jobs. They're quite, it'll be in a cafe or, it's very touristy. and it's quite small. So I thought, right, I'll go back to Sydney, I'll get a job, I'll save up some money, and then I'll travel again. But actually, what I didn't really think about was I didn't know anybody there. Stupidly. I kind of thought, this will be fine, I can do this. And I went back to Sydney, and I remember feeling incredibly lonely and quite lost. And I thought, oh my goodness, I know no one. What am I going to do? And I just thought, right, just get into the to-do list. So I kind of went on Gumtree, found myself a house. I remember meeting this Kiwi girl, Alex, and there was a house near Bondi Beach with all the other Irish. And I thought, yep, this will do me. And then my other housemate, Emma, who was from England. And I thought, right, now I have a base. I got myself a job in a private school, and it was only for a term, but it was enough to kind of cover me and keep me going. But it was a real mixed bag of, I'm so excited I'm in Australia and I'm living in Bondi Beach and I'm working in this private school, and the school was amazing, it really was incredible. To other times just feeling, what on earth am I doing? I'm completely lost. I don't have my family here, and I felt quite lonely, and it kind of ebbed and flowed like that until I kind of got more settled with my housemates, and then I ended up kind of getting into the groove and having a really good time. But it certainly wasn't easy. You know, when I look back, I think, I'm not sure I could do that by myself again. You know, I wouldn't wish it on anybody again. And I know that's quite a similar story, because there's different friends that have done things by themselves. They've moved and they've said the same thing. You know, you do end up walking around these incredible cities on your own, a little bit lonely. And then you have to give yourself a shake and join the walking clubs, join the yoga classes, you know, the surfing, whatever it is that's your thing. You have to find your tribe, I suppose, and really push yourself. And it takes time, really took time. But when I look back now, I think, gosh, I was brave, but I didn't think it at the time. I genuinely didn't.
I suppose you're just trying to get by at the time. You don't realise what a huge thing it is that you're doing. Do you know, it's interesting hearing you say that as well about go join the walking clubs, the yoga classes, surfing, whatever it might be, because that's something that will probably hit hard with a lot of people who are at home as well, you know, who haven't taken a career break, but in terms of work-life balance and avoiding some of those difficulties that come with loneliness, because it is just endemic, those sorts of feelings. It's important to look for that, and maybe finding that those were things that you had to do when you were out there, because you couldn't take it for granted that you had your usual support network around you, might not have been a bad thing then, in terms of, you know, at home that those are things to keep going with as well.
Absolutely. I think that loneliness is something that's quite renowned or well known in older people, but it's really not spoken about for younger people too much. It's kind of focused on in school that you need to find your kind of friendship group, but there's a little period of time in your 20s and 30s, I suppose, that a lot of people fall into it naturally. But if you don't, you know, sometimes it's very easy to just get comfortable. But actually, if I've ever pushed myself, and actually I did that when I came home, I joined walking groups and, you know, yoga places, and because I thought I kind of need to start afresh here. It's a new chapter, moving home, I need to start afresh. So I did kind of a similar thing, joining all these groups to try and meet new like-minded people, as well as, you know, great friends that I already had. So it takes a wee bit of bravery. And I think the problem is when you're a wee bit lonely, you're not quite yourself. You know, you're probably a wee bit quieter, your confidence is a wee bit low, so it takes even more courage to put yourself out there. But I mean, if you're in a foreign country, you just have to. You've no choice to put a smile on your face and go. And then all you need is really one person. Once you meet one person that you get on with, it gives you a wee boost, and then you can kind of go on to the next thing, and then you build it up, and then you end up with this incredible network of like-minded, lovely people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you invest in them.
It's that investing as well. I mean, for me, when I was teaching in Valencia, it was my friend Orly, who is just a fantastic woman she's Belgian. She lived in the United States when she was a kid, and I met her in Madrid, but we were both working in Valencia, and it was through her that I then met lots of other people. But it is that just pushing yourself to be brave and go out there to meet people, because when you're away, it is different. But I think that makes you put the effort in a bit more sometimes.
It is different. And I think, you could very easily, like I know a friend actually in America who jumped on a flight and went home at Christmas time because he just couldn't cope with and he had a girlfriend at home, I suppose. But that always was a big pullback. And another friend in Australia who just went, I just can't stick it anymore. So I think there is another side. There's a flipped coin there. People can say, oh, it's amazing and such a great life. It absolutely is 100%, which I'm sure we'll talk more about. But the flip side of that, I'm sure, as you know, living in Spain, I don't know if you experienced it or not, but the flip side is you can get a wee bit lonely and a wee bit homesick, and you need to be able to cope with that and have a few strategies in your back pocket.
Yeah.
To keep yourself happy and pushing forward,
Yeah, mine was my mum's 50th birthday. So I had been out there from late summer and her birthday was in October. And knowing that it was coming up to a big birthday, and my family are all very close. My husband says we would get together for the opening of an envelope. So a 50th birthday was a big deal.
It is a big deal.
And I just was going to pieces. And I'd been doing okay, but I suddenly felt, and I was only 3 hours away on a plane, but I felt forever away. And I had an aunt and an uncle who put a tenner a month into my bank account to pay a phone bill. Not my mobile, but, a landline phone, because I wasn't phoning any person from home while I was in Spain on a mobile in those days. These were the days that I had to go to the internet cafe around the corner to check my MySpace and send an email.
Didn't have the dial-up tone.
Oh, but of course.
We had to wait about 5 minutes for it actually.
Wait for it to go through all the noises of the day. But for me, we had all been told, do not go home until Christmas. And for me, actually, it was the opposite. I got myself into such a state. My family were amazing. They organised for me to get a flight home just for the weekend. The school I was teaching in were brilliant. They said, go on the Friday, don't worry about it, and come back on the Sunday or Monday. So I had an extra day. And knowing that I could get home if I needed to was then a big settler for me. And I felt much happier then being that distance away, knowing, do you know what, if something happens and I need to get home, I can get home. Yeah. And then that made it easier for me to settle into being, and honestly, it was the best year. It was the best year for me. Something that we've talked about before personally is the outdoor lifestyle. You had it in Australia, I had it in Valencia. And for me, that made such a difference to my work-life balance. Not that I had anything like the responsibilities that I have these days in teaching, but all those occasions where you're spending so much time outside, for me, that had a huge uplifting impact.
Absolutely. And in the sunshine, and probably, I don't know what yours was like, but probably other colleagues doing the same, leaving on time, going outside to do their own hobbies or whatever it was. And probably that encouraged you too. You see others doing it and leaving on time. In Australia on a Friday, past 3 o'clock in any office, or, school's kind of different. You have to wait to the end of the day, but certainly in any office, you wouldn't be finding an Aussie, and I think that's absolutely the right way to do it. You've worked all week and then have a really good time at the weekends. And a lot of it was outdoorsy, fresh air, exercise. I just couldn't believe older people in Australia were so fit. They are like swimming in the ocean every day, running, jogging, cycling, and they looked incredible. I just couldn't get over it. I was like, I can't believe these people, and good on them. 70s, 80s, lifting weights, swimming, surfing. I mean, this man used to go out when I was surfing, and he was an American, but he lived in Australia, and he was a paddleboarder, had this huge paddleboard, and he was out every morning, kind of just after dawn, and he must have been easily 60s, late 60s, early 70s, and you should have seen the weight of the board. And I just thought, good on you, loving life. I thought, well, if I'm here, that's what I want to be doing, making the most of your life and exercising and being strong.
So what was it very different teaching in Australia?
I mean,
in terms of the whole thing, like in the school, but also your wider work-life balance and workload and those sorts of things. What was there a marked difference in your experience?
Do there's so many things flashing into my head when you ask me that question.
I know, sorry, that's quite big.
It was different in so many ways. I mean, one of the first things was I initially went to sub in a public school. It was an all boys school in Sydney West, I think it was. And if you don't know about that, there's some tricky schools. Now, you know me, Amanda, I'm like 5'2", a small wee woman going into this boys' school. These boys are big boys. And it was difficult, really challenging behaviour. I got swore at. They would take the mick, you know, because I had an accent. They all just kept saying, "Are you from Scotland?" Be like, "No, not from Scotland." And all my behaviour management just went out the window and then I was determined. I kept going back, and I thought, I am determined to make this work. And then I just gave up. To be honest, I thought, I can't do this. You know, this is actually not worth the paycheck. It's awful. So I found some of the public schools that I subbed in really tough, but then maybe it's just finding your niche. So then I was employed by a private school, like wonderful school in the suburbs in Sydney. Staff were so supportive. And I think that's a real, you really need that in whatever type of environment you're in. And they were just so lovely to me, and the kids were lovely. But even the curriculum's so different. It's so prescriptive in Northern Ireland and the UK, as you know. Like with biology, it's literally bullet point by bullet point you need to teach and make sure they know at GCSE and A level, and it's so prescriptive. Whereas in Australia, it's not like that at all. I remember saying, "But I don't really know what to teach. Where's the spec? Where is the sentence by sentence?" And they were like, you know, so laid back. "What are you talking about? You know, you basically teach like the world around us." And there was like literally one sentence, you know, like teaching about, I can't remember what it was now, even like tectonic plate shift and something else. And I was just like, what? I remember being really confused. So that was really different too. I really adjusting to a broader spec, I actually found really different being
Sure, the world around us, that's not that big a topic, the world, that's fine.
I was like, where do I even start here? And me being me, I really wanted to do a good job, and I didn't want to let myself down and let down, you know, anybody from the UK or Northern Ireland coming over. I felt the weight of that on my shoulders, like I have to be a good teacher here. And I really, once I got to grips with that, I loved the freedom of it. But initially I found that really difficult. But having the freedom to kind of focus on what you're passionate about, to get the kids and the students engaged in that, was wonderful once I kind of got that on board. And because they were such good students, it made it so more enjoyable. You know, when you can actually teach in a classroom and they're engaged and listening and they're not swearing at you, that was wonderful. You know, and then I don't know if I've mentioned too much about, I worked in a distance education school in Sydney. And actually, that's the bulk of what I ended up doing in Byron Bay. So a distance education school is a school that children who don't attend face-to-face, basically, mainstream school, for lots of different reasons. So it could be mental health, it could be medical. It was mainly mental health. So in Sydney, I just happened to fall upon it because a friend was doing a few sub days and she said, "Amanda, you'll love this. I'll get you in there." So I did a few sub days there, and it's basically, you teach online, you teach face to face. Sometimes they'll come to the school, the distance ed school, because there's not like 1,000 pupils running around. You know, it's kind of appointment times or small groups. Or you go to special centres where there's 5 or 6, and it's challenging because those students have really huge mental health needs. So you really have to try and hook them and engage them in their education. But I really enjoyed it because it was more, I suppose, one-on-one and small groups. And I suppose what I loved about it the most is, when you think of these children, some of them aren't leaving their bedroom, they're not leaving their houses, they're really disengaged from education. And then if you can get them to meet you and do some workshops, they barely look at you and speak to you at the start, but then by the end, they're looking at you, they're smiling, they're engaging with their students. You know, some of them were doing practicals and burning things and blowing stuff up. And I thought, gosh, I'm really enjoying this for a different side of education. So I did that for quite a long time. That was a really interesting side of education that I hadn't quite experienced before. I loved that.
So I suppose that gave you then so many different experiences of teaching that you were able to bring home with you.
Absolutely. I mean, you just couldn't you couldn't use some traditional methods. Some of them, their writing mightn't have been quite good, their reading wasn't great. So you really had to engage on a different level, and try and get them through some kind of qualification to, if they wanted to go to tech, or, if they wanted to get a basic education. So, and traditionally I'd worked in quite high end like grammar schools where it was all raising attainment, and because I'm biology, students that wanted to be vets, doctors, physios, really I had to push them and help them get really top grades, which I love doing as well. But this was totally different. This was children who could barely leave the house, and once they did, you had to hook them in, and I really enjoyed that for a while, and coming up with workshops, getting the broad spec of science in, but also just getting them talking to each other and smiling and looking up, and all those basic essential skills that education actually weaves so nicely in the day-to-day schooling, but it's almost a given. But actually, that's what you're really given a lot of students, is routine, friendships, social skills, basic, life skills. That we give them on top of the curriculum. That's so important. But some of these children in Australia just didn't have it. They didn't have it yet, even as a teenager. So I loved that. I loved seeing them smiling at the end of the day and actually building some friendships over a space of, some of the programs could have been 6 months, 9 months, a year, whatever they were. So I really enjoyed that side of it.
That sounds really rewarding.
It was hard work in some ways, but it was rewarding in a totally different way. Than I had different types of rewards than I had from teaching.
So when then did you start feeling the pull to come back? When did you start thinking that it was coming to that point where you were going to make the move back home?
Honestly, that filled me full of, I was going to say anxiety, which I probably shouldn't say, because it was probably, well, maybe it was nervousness. I'm not sure. Every year I knew, like, will I apply for another year? Should I stay? And I thought, you know what, I'll just keep applying. And then I knew the career break has a max 5 years. So it was coming up kind of year 4. I thought, right, I'm only getting 1 more year here. So I really need to make some big life decisions. Like, am I going to go home? Will I go back to that job? Should I go back to Northern Ireland? And actually I was quite confused. I started to look at houses in Australia, and I was going to buy a house in Ballina where I was living. And then actually something happened to my brother. He just it wasn't a big accident, it was a small accident, but I remember being in Sydney and just thinking, I need a sign here. I'm just not sure what to do. And I woke up in the morning and I had all these missed calls from home. I had about 15 missed calls, when you switch your phone on, all the WhatsApp calls. And my heart just sank. I thought, oh my goodness. And when you're shaking, ringing, and I was like, what's wrong? And thankfully he was okay, but he'd had an accident, and I took that as the sign. I thought, I can't be so far away anymore. I absolutely adored the lifestyle. I loved my job. I had some really lovely friends, and I was the healthiest I'd ever been in my life. Like getting up, swimming in the ocean, doing yoga, exercising, because the work-life balance over there is honestly unreal. Well, I had found it. I'm not sure it is everywhere in the big cities, but I had found it for me.
Yeah.
But in reality, family was kind of calling me back. And not even just family. I think being from Northern Ireland, there's something about your home and your roots and your connections. And I just really felt a bit lost by the 5th year, because I didn't have family. I think a lot of people that stay over there have a sister or a brother or mum or dad or someone. And I just ended up feeling a bit lost and a bit adrift. So I thought, you know what, I'll go home and connect with family, because you only see them for 2-3 weeks and then I'd be away again, sobbing through the airport. It was terrible. And then once I got to Australia, of course, I loved it. But I kind of thought, I can't just go home for 2 weeks and sob through the airport again. I really think it's time to come home. And I had the wonderful opportunity with the career break that I had the job to step back into. I mean, it is an incredible the career break's incredible for that, because I worked hard to get the job in the school that I'm in and did lots of interviews and made sure I had a lot to say and sell myself to get into it because I wanted it so badly. So I was so grateful to have that to come home to, and I thought, it's time. I'll give it a crack. I'm sure I've been home now about 5 years, I think.
So you've been home now the same length that you were away?
Same length I was away. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Time
And
just goes.
I suppose when you're thinking about family and the draw that has, the time difference must have been tough for you to keep in touch with family when you were away.
It was really tough. Actually, that was one of the toughest things, when you're here and, if it's something funny or you want to tell somebody something, you just pick up the phone. Whereas there, I would literally be counting down the hours, like, when can I phone my mom or my brother, or, and you had to wait. And obviously, if you were upset about something or something had happened, you had to wait. Although Mum always said, you can ring me in the middle of the night, but I wasn't going to do that for like a wee off day, And that's why I had some incredible friends in Australia who became my sisters, total family. And they were the people I would call on. And I'm very grateful and lucky to have them still. And we still Skype and still keep in touch. But I suppose it's very hard to replace. It's never quite your family as much as you're so close. And then actually what happened was I came home and then I really missed my really close friends in Australia because they were like sisters to me. So that was another adjustment, coming home.
And how was that coming home? Oh, yeah, I did actually. Do you know, even just the change of pace with things, and it sounds like such a small thing, but for me, moving back from Spain, when I moved back from Valencia, I had got into the pattern of I have a massive lunch at 2:00, then I have a nap, everything closes, everything reopens at 5. The day starts again from 5, and then we, if I'm going out to meet friends for dinner, we're going out at 10. And then I came back to Northern Ireland and it was like, everything closes at 5:30. What is this? And even just those things. And something that you and I have both suffered from is the cold, the temperature. So
the cold.
That really, there's a reason that whenever my husband got me super double knit cozy socks at Christmas, you were the first person that I thought, right, I must text Amanda about these. Because,
100%.
5 years later, having come back from Australia, I know you're still freezing. So
I know. Do you know what? Thermals are just a godsend. I'm like, why did I not do this fully before I left? Like, before I left for Australia, I was freezing constantly. And when I come back from Australia, I thought, right, I need to sort this out. I can't be so cold all the time because I know I want to be here. I do, but the weather is depressing me. And discovering like thermal type long johns and thermal long sleeve, everything thermal is revolutionary. I mean, it's quite sad that I wear them from probably October to May, but you know what? Whatever works for you. But no, moving home, honestly, it was such a challenge. I was grateful for the school to just step back so the job part was sorted. But because I was away 5 years, it was like everybody had moved on. Of course they had. So I did have lovely friends and lovely family, but you kind of have to start again. So that's why I, joined like online walking groups and walked the morns. And the very first one I went to was an absolute disaster because I remember sitting in Mum's house thinking, should I go? I mean, there's a bit of a weather warning, but surely it'll be fine.
A bit of a weather warning.
And
you went up the Mourne Mountains?
Yes. I thought to myself, surely the walking guide, the leader wouldn't take us out in a weather warning if it was really true. So Amanda, I got there and it was beautiful, bright skies, gorgeous. And we started on the path. I think it was at the Bloody Bridge towards the Mournes. And then honestly, about 1 hour in, it turned grey, the clouds came down, the rain.
No.
Do you know that rain that it's almost like horizontal? Like it's absolutely horizontal. And
not rain that you want to be climbing a mountain in?
No, I didn't really have the right gear. And this lovely girl, I can't even remember her name now, this lovely woman, she had a spare pair of waterproof trousers in her bag and she gave them to me. And we were absolutely sopping wet. So when we got back down to the car park, we were all just trudging along. No one was talking. It was a disaster. And when you're peeling off your clothes, and it wasn't a wetsuit, but it was like stuck and wrung out. And I remember arriving back and Mum being so enthusiastic, like, well, how was it? Trying to encourage me. And I was like, it was absolutely awful. Now, thankfully, I did go again. I just made sure, I said to myself, I'm not going anywhere. If it says it's going to rain, I'm not going.
I mean, that's going to limit you a bit in Northern Ireland when it comes to going outside.
I'm a fair weather hiker, but I made some lovely friends. But honestly, I think I cried for about a year and a half on and off. It took a long time. But what made me feel better was a lot of people that came back from Australia said that to me. They said, you need about a year and a half, 2 years. Don't worry if you really feel like you've done the wrong thing for a little while. It takes time. And honestly, even though it was hard, I wouldn't have went back. I really wanted to be here. I just wanted to feel better about it. And then I finally did. I think getting my house really helped. Your only home.
Yes.
That really helped. So.
And that is something that we are going to come back and talk about in just a second, looking at then some of the things that you've learned in terms of how it's helping you now with work-life balance and what lessons you've learned from that trip in terms of now slotting back into teaching here.
Yep.
So we will take another short pause and we'll talk about that in just a minute.
BETT UK is just 2 weeks away. Are you ready to join 30,000 attendees, 600 plus exhibitors on 7 content stages from 120 countries, and see Louis Theroux, Dame Darcy Bustle, Jason Arday, Laurel Kana, Baroness Floella Benjamin, Dan Fitzpatrick, Mr. PICT, and so much more? I might need to bring my trainers. The best part? Educators go free. Get your ticket now at uk.bettshow.com/visitor-registration.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishing professional development books and resources to support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Have you checked out their latest releases? Use the code JCTTR2324 for 20% off your order. Don't miss out. Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading.
Introducing Eton X from Eton College, a diverse range of quality online courses enabling young people to aspire and excel. Designed for self-study, these web-based courses empower your students with essential leadership, communication, and academic skills for success at school and beyond. Our Study Skills course sharpens their learning abilities, while the AI Fundamentals course equips them with vital digital know-how in a fast-changing world. Other popular courses include verbal communication, critical thinking, writing skills, resilience, creative problem solving, and many more. Offer the Eton X curriculum in your school for free. Visit etonx.com to find out more.
We are in our last 15 minutes, Amanda. This has flown.
Absolutely flown by.
And so I suppose the last thing that I was hoping we could talk about tonight is just the impact then, like the longer lasting impact it's had on you in terms of how you view work-life balance, having been away and been in that different culture. How do you find that you try to, has it had an impact on how you try to keep a healthy work-life balance here?
Oh, yes. I mean, I think it's totally changed the way I view my job and my life. When I came back, I really came back to, be back home and see family and friends. And I didn't want to get stuck into that trap of, before I left, I was working full time. I would easily work on a Saturday or a Sunday, not necessarily all day, but definitely half of it. And I remember saying no to my nanny a few times for going out to do things. And then she passed away when I was in Australia, and I'll never forget that. And obviously we can all look back and say that. So I kind of thought, right, I'm moving home and I want to do really well in my job and my career, but that can't be it. There has to be a time slot for that, and then that finishes, and then I need to build up my life. And I think the Aussies are so good at that. They're so good at when they're in work, they're on, but the school that I was at, they left on time. There was no work in the evenings. They were like, we will get this done during the day and that's it. And the chat was all, what are you doing at the weekend? Are you going surfing later? So I think when I came home, I thought, right, I really want to try and bring back a little bit of the Australian lifestyle and the Australian me, because I loved Australian Amanda. She was less stressed and she was more fun. And I didn't want to bring back stressed Amanda. So I think, I'm not sure I do it very well all the time, but I'm definitely a lot better at when I'm in school, I get my work done. And if I need to bring stuff home, I will, but I kind of almost set myself a time limit. I'll say, right, I'm going to do 45 minutes on that and that's it. Or I'll say, right, I'll do half an hour after school and get this done. And then, of course, you send me a wee text or I send you a wee text.
Yep.
And, are we doing a bit of yoga today? Or are we doing a bit of exercise? So I really set small goals. It doesn't have to be big, but something to switch off. And how many times have we said, we'll go into that little fitness room and be like frustrated and stressed and tired and have a little moan about something for a few minutes. And then if we do the workout at the end, it's like, oh my goodness, I feel amazing. And you drive home with the radio on and you feel 100% better. And
the weight comes off, the shoulders,
and the stress.
This was why I wanted to have you on for January, because I just think for so many of us starting out, new year, we do tend to think about work-life balance and stress and things in a slightly different way. And I think for both of us, having that opportunity of being away does have an impact, because you can see there are other ways. And if anybody has the opportunity of having someone or a small group in school where you work that you can check in with at the end of the day and do something fitness wise, whether it's, and I mean, we're not doing things that are expensive. We're going online and finding free YouTube videos of, yoga workouts and things, or, other platforms, fitness platforms that we might happen to have individually. But that little bit of meeting up with somebody else who's in the same position as you, they're going through the same sort of a schedule or the same type of job. And it's not that it's only teachers who, can come along, obviously, to Arwen. It's classroom assistants, other non-teaching staff as well. But just that going over, spending that time with another adult, talking and doing a bit of exercise makes such a huge difference to me. And also, whenever we're over, our students are outside the building and we're in a fitness room upstairs and they can see us. And there's also that getting over the weirdness of, oh my goodness, they can see me turning purple doing squats with weights on my back here. This isn't a good look. But I don't know how you feel about it, but I think that's also a really good thing for students to see, that, it's 4 o'clock and we're not sitting working in our classrooms. We are up taking care of our physical and mental health. We don't say these things are important. We actually mean it. We do value these things. We are putting that time in ourselves.
I think it is good for them to see it. And it's funny because the younger ones, my year nines, they're the ones, well, they're pretty vocal about quite a lot of things actually. But, they said, I think it was May, June time, probably we were going quite a lot and they were probably out in the tennis courts or whatever, Miss, we saw you with Miss Kinsey Smith. Were you actually working out? And I was like, of course I was. Why would I not be? And they were like, yeah, well, I suppose I kind of thought that was a bit weird, but then I kind of thought, no, it's not. And I said, no, it's not. Just because we're a bit older and we're teachers, do you think we're actually chained to the desk? So it is good for them. I think it's good for me personally on so many levels. I think because it's on site and, for other people listening, it is the tiniest little room. We make the most of the space that we've got. But to not have that excuse of, having to drive anywhere, you just meet your friend, have a wee chat, do a wee workout, and it's honestly helps my stress levels and helps physically, mentally, all of the above. And I know this every single time. We know that workouts and yoga especially, I would get headaches quite often, and our Yoga Tuesdays really saves me, and I can go in with a headache and we'll do half an hour of yoga and honestly it goes away. My headache's gone. So I did learn that. I didn't do yoga before I went to Australia. I learned yoga when I was in Australia, and it just transformed my life. And I really want to, it doesn't take much, and I need to keep reminding myself, keep doing these little things for yourself and connecting with your friends. And your colleagues can be your friends. You know, you don't have to shuffle in and shuffle out. There's great people there all around you, you know, that you just need to connect with and make the time to do that.
I think that's so important. Just, you don't know as well who else could be sitting there wishing someone would suggest meeting for a coffee after work, or going over to use a room in the school to do a workout or a yoga or some breathing or whatever it might be. You know, there might be someone really wanting to reach out for it as well.
Yeah, and some days, like we're saying, we have a wee moan. You know, some days it's just such a laugh.
Oh yeah,
you know,
a lot of the time.
Yes, and like coordination's just off, and it's just such a laugh. And it just, you know, I think it's a good. I was listening to Erica Luke's episode, which I found really interesting on so many levels. But actually, she made a really good point about being busy. You know, I find I'm a bit busier now, not just with school life because of this big old house that we're renovating, but actually I thought it would be more stressful, and it can be sometimes, but actually I feel happier for it, because it's almost like, right, when I've done my work, that's done, and then I start this other chapter. And of course the doggy is a great distraction too, but I think, you know, I used to put too much emphasis on work, and everything had to be perfect, and I had to work in the evenings and work at the weekends. You don't. You can be really good at your job and do your work well and leave it there and invest in your life and have fun and be healthier and still be a great teacher.
And be a better teacher, I would argue, as well.
Teacher, yeah, because your mental health's better.
I have to say, like, you are one of the few people I know, you don't just talk about things that, I mean, I think of all these sorts of things that just look fabulous in my head, but I would shy away from actually doing them. And you go for those projects in real life. You took the career break. You joined the walking group going up a mountain. You did up a beautiful coffee van. Now you're renovating a house.
I know.
You know, you have the courage to go and do all of those things. And I personally, I do find that inspirational. I think that's an amazing thing to have and to be able to see, and for friends, colleagues, family, students to be able to see that. And thank you so much for coming on to share these sorts of things. Is there anything that you would like to have just as like a final bit of advice, or something that you would love to see in the future in terms of people looking for that kind of balance in their life? What would be your sort of final thoughts or advice there that you could share with us?
I think something very simply is to talk about it. I think when I first started, and I heard this in one of your other episodes, and I was like, you know, agreeing in the kitchen, I just felt I couldn't say that I was struggling. My first year in teaching was incredibly tough, and I didn't ask for any support, any help, because I thought that's going to seem like I'm failing and I can't do it, and I don't want that. So in school, I looked like I was doing okay, and actually when I went home, I was really struggling, and I wish I would have just asked my head of department or a friend in the science department, anybody, but I didn't. I just kept quiet because I felt like as a professional I need to go in, do my job and leave, and I can't ask. So I would say to anybody starting out, don't feel like a failure to ask for help. You know, we've all been there, we all know it's tough, so just ask. You know, we won't think anything less of you. I think if you go into teaching, you have a certain personality and you want to help and support. Hopefully that's the general idea. So we are approachable, and I think for anybody starting out, don't feel like a failure for asking for help, and you should get it. You're entitled to it. You should get the right person to help you.
I think that's very honest and very relatable, and I think it's something that we've all experienced, and I think that's a really good idea to end on there, Amanda. So thank you so much for coming on tonight. I have loved that. I've loved hearing more about Australia.
Oh, good. I'm glad. We could keep chatting for ages, but sure, we can catch up on Yoga Tuesdays.
We'll catch up on Yoga Tuesdays. Exactly. So there's would be my final bit of advice there. Get yourself an Amanda. We're small, we're portable, and you know, you can join us for Yoga Tuesdays and things.
And
stretch. Wow.
some more days than others.
You know, but having someone to have that sort of connection with in school, I find really can make a huge difference. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for asking me. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad you've enjoyed yourself. And that is us for this evening. Thank you for joining us on the Sunday Late Late Show on Sunday, the 14th of January, 2024. Goodness me.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.